Righto, let's get started. Welcome everybody to the Lincoln's Business Recovery Project number 2. This is the workforce episode. I see there's still a few people joining, but yep, it'll be fine to jump in whenever you feel. Firstly, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Brendan Taylor, one of the partners at Lincoln's here, and I'll also introduce to you Jenni Leonard, who is our HR manager. I'm not sure, you can't see Jenni to screen, but you'll see her soon enough, I'm sure. So this is the second in a series of 4 of this particular webinar series, and it's all about coming out of COVID, basically. And so if you listened to last week's, I hope you got something from it, and I hope you pick up something. This one's got a slightly different sort of angle to it, but it's all about labour, workforce, and some of the issues around that. So getting into it, you've heard it all before, but I'll say it again. This has been a year like no other. In business, some have been terribly affected by the restrictions, some probably hardly at all. And it's the same with the workforce. You know, some have lost their jobs, some stopped work but continued to be paid thanks to JobKeeper. Some worked from home when they hadn't ever before. Many people feared for their job security and of the unknown. So what's next? You know, businesses scrambled for survival. They didn't know where to go. They were asking all these questions. Can I afford to pay my staff? Can I keep my employees on? Am I allowed to let them go? Our observation is that most business owners have shown a huge level of care for the welfare of their staff. They wanted to be able to keep everyone employed and still want to as things improve. But is this over? Yeah, we are still in restriction. Yeah, Victoria has shown that it could turn bad within a week. The government help is about to turn off, and economically, we're coming from a very long way back. So you guys have probably got 2 main questions, so I'll preempt them for you if you haven't. What is next for our business and our staff? And what have we learned so far? And what else can we glean from this year to make us better, smarter, stronger, faster, safer? Particularly in this particular exercise around the using your workforce resources. So Jenni will answer some of the first question that I asked and explain some of the traps, issues, tricks with HR in relation to easing off JobKeeper. And then I'll come back in a few minutes' time and I'll talk about some of those ideas on the second question. So Jen, over to you, and the expert HR manager from Lincoln's.
Thanks for the intro, Brendan, and hello to everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to speak a bit about some HR stuff, particularly how it pertains to JobKeeper and coming off the government stimulus measures. Just bear in mind, though, a reminder that we have 2 employment systems here in Western Australia, a state and a federal. Some of what I go through today will be slightly different for both those systems, and I'll point that out along the way. You are all aware that the government probably aware that the government has announced extensions to the JobKeeper program, and that brings with it some different rules. You all know very well what JobKeeper 1 is all about, which ends at the end of this month on the 27th of September. And what that means is that we're going to be left with 3 systems in the JobKeeper world. So let's have a look at what they look like. Should be seeing a slide come up on the screen now. So you all are very familiar with JobKeeper 1. That started on the 1st of March and it finishes on the 27th of September. That will lead us into JobKeeper 2, which will now include employees who are employed at the 1st of July. And to be eligible for that, you need to demonstrate a 30% decline in your GST actual turnover. I'm not going to talk too much about this. It's not my area. It's your accountants can fill you in on this, but just to give you a bit of context on how the JobKeeper program is going to be structured. So there will be 2 phases in JobKeeper 2. The first phase goes from the 28th of September through to the 3rd of January. And to be eligible for that, you need to have a 30% decline in turnover for the September quarter as compared to the previous September quarter. And the payments are different now too. So as the hours that the employees have to work to be eligible. So the payment is down to $1,200 per fortnight, and your employee has to have worked an average of 20 hours per week over a 4-week period in either February 2020 or June 2020. So it depends on which way you're reporting. And the other employees in that category get $750. So it really comes down to the hours that they work. Similar structure for the 4th of January through to the 28th of March, but the payments are different. $1,000 for those employees who have the average of 20 hours a week over a 4-week period, or $650 for those who don't work that average hours. Then in the middle of the screen, you can see now there's a new category called legacy employers. This is only applicable to federal employers. This is for employees that don't qualify for JobKeeper 1 anymore. Well, that finishes, but don't qualify for JobKeeper 2, but were eligible for JobKeeper 1. For this, you need to be able to show that you've got at least a 10% decline in turnover. Now, it doesn't entitle you to any JobKeeper subsidy, but it does enable you to retain some employment flexibilities, and I'll cover those in a second. For our legacy employers out there, you've got 3 periods in between now and the end of March. And for each of those periods that they're noted there, I'm not going to talk through them, you need to satisfy that 10% decline in turnover. And for that, you need to have a certificate verifying your 10% decline in turnover from your accountant. So keep that in mind if that's you out there on a legacy. And then, of course, the third category of people, employers out there, will be those who will stop getting JobKeeper from after the 27th of September because they don't meet either of those 2 declining turnover tests. So that means no more JobKeeper subsidy and no more flexibilities with your employees. So let's have a look at what those the flexibilities look like. The next slide that comes up will show you that, and I'll talk through it. But firstly, just some background. At the top of that tree, you've got JobKeeper 1. And when that came in, that the Fair Work Act was amended to provide employers with some flexibilities that were pretty unprecedented, and it gave employers some pretty strong powers in relation to directing their employees to do or not do certain things. They were called JobKeeper Enabling Directions. Now, that was for the federal system. The state system quickly followed and put in place very similar provisions, and I'll explain where those differences are in a second. So those flexibilities in JobKeeper 1 enabled employers to reduce ordinary hours for their employees, including down to 0, which effectively is a stand down, change the days or times when an employee works, direct their employees to work in a different location, or vary their employees' duties. Now, if you're in the federal system, you were also able to request that your employees take annual leave, including at half pay. So that's what the flexibilities in JobKeeper 1 looked like. There were some fairly defined consultation requirements there that required 3 days written notice to employees if you were going to enact one of those JobKeeper enabling directions. Now, the first thing to be aware of for everybody is that there is no longer the access to direct your employees to take annual leave. So if you've been able to do that now, that will stop after the 27th of September, regardless of if you've got JobKeeper 2 or if you're a legacy employer. All right, so that's finished now. What that means is that you have to revert back to the provisions of the award where that provides for you to be able to do that. And there's fairly strict provisions around that. Usually it's around where there's excessive leave or if you've got your office closed or your business closing down for some reason. So you're back to how we were prior to March with regard to that particular ability. So looking at JobKeeper 2, for employers that are eligible for JobKeeper 2, you can pretty much do all the things that you used to do with JobKeeper 1 in terms of flexibilities, except for the annual leave thing. You can still reduce the ordinary hours. You can reduce them down to 0. You can change the days or times employees work, direct them to work in a different location. Home is a common one for that. And you can vary your employees' duties. The notice period is still 3 days. Okay, so that's pretty much the same. If you're in the legacy group, you still have the provisions to be flexible with your employees. Remember, you're not getting any subsidies anymore, but you've still got the flexibility arrangements there. The key differences are that you can reduce an employee's ordinary hours, but that can't go below 60% of the hours they used to work prior to JobKeeper I coming in on the 1st of March. All right, so you can reduce it by 40%. They can't go below the 60% of what they used to do. They also can't work less than 2 hours a day. All right, everything else is the same except for the consultation requirements, and that now is extended out to 7 days for your employees. So if you want to enact a JobKeeper enabling direction, you've got to give them 7 days notice. All right, then we've got our third group that aren't eligible for JobKeeper any longer. And unfortunately for you guys, you don't have any ability for enacting JobKeeper enabling directions anymore. So you're back to award provisions and Fair Work Act or the state legislation. So the JobKeeper enabling directions, if you've got one in place now, it should have been in writing if it was done properly. So I would suggest that you get out that written JobKeeper enabling direction and just see what it said. If it said that it ended on the 27th of September, then it's probably good practice to issue a new one that has the new date of the 28th of March on it, or that can also be revoked at your discretion as well. If you've got employees that are stood down at the moment on a JobKeeper enabling stand down provision, I would suggest that if you're asking them to come back and they've been off for a long period, you can bring them back, and it's reasonable to do that, but it's probably also reasonable to give them a bit of notice, a few days at least, because they've been off, if they've been off for a long time. Okay, so that is the new world of JobKeeper and what you're able to do in terms of directing your employees to do certain things. I'd also like to touch on redundancies. So redundancies is probably an option that many businesses have been considering over the period of this COVID pandemic. But I guess I just want to just be really clear that the COVID pandemic and the chaos around that hasn't changed the laws around the process for redundancy. So if it's not done correctly and in the right way and you don't do all the right things, you are still subject to unfair dismissal if it's not done properly. So even with all the COVID stuff going on, so just be very careful on that. There have been quite a few cases of employers that have been stung by that in this period. So if you're looking at a redundancy, they're fairly complicated things to do. You need to get them right. So sing out for help. But the key points are, first and foremost, make sure that you're transparent with your employees. Don't be afraid to speak to them as a group. The more transparent you are, the better for them and you. Make sure that it's fair and be consistent. It's really, really important for your reputation as an employer a lot of the time. Your redundancies must be genuine. If they're not genuine, then your employee has access to claim unfair dismissal from you. In order for it to be genuine, the role or the work the employee does it has to be not required to be done by anybody anymore. That's the first point. You also need to consult as per the provisions of the award. So get your award out, look at what the provisions are. There's some fairly tight consultancy provisions there. So make sure you consult with your employees. Don't try to make a decision before you consult, because you never know, your employees might have some really good ideas that would satisfy your requirements to phase out your employees, but also keep them employed. So keep an open mind when you speak to your employees. And the consultation process, listen to them, explore redeployment options if you can. listen to the feedback, and most importantly, maintain documentation of the discussions you have and the selection criteria that you have in place to choose which employees are going to be made redundant, because that's going to be important for you if there's any claim later on down the track. I think that's pretty much all I have at the moment, Brendan, on just the JobKeeper enabling directions and redundancies that people might be facing at the moment.
Righto. Thanks, Jen. That was good. I meant to say at the start that everyone has a Q&A chat button at the bottom of your screen, and if you've got questions, please type them in and we'll answer them on the go. Or if you want to ask any particular questions while I'm talking about my bit, we'll come back to them at the end or whatever. But use them if it's there. Further to that, though, Jenni's got some great skills in HR and these types of things. So, there's a lot of detail and potential issues behind some of those matters, the redundancy matter and the directing the employees matter. So if you've got any more detailed or specific questions, contact Jenni at Lincoln's at any time. Just going back to that second question that I raised, and I want to just talk about your workforce resource and what it now looks like post-COVID. The sudden shutdown of so many businesses has forced us and you to think quickly and laterally about how to continue to operate your business and to do your thing and sell your stuff while keeping your workforce safe. So it's been 7 or 8 months now, I think. And we've had some interesting observations over that time, and I just want to bring a few of them to the table. So, you'll see on your screen there just a number of headings or topics that we've seen things really come to play that have been different to how they were in the old normal. Innovation, it was surprising how quickly we set up people in safe places, often at home, to achieve their normal tasks. There was lots of learning that had to happen about the use of tools that you'd never used before, things like Zoom and virtual office, and some of the other practices that you had to learn very quickly about, no touch or low touch of food and other products that you sell. The innovation was quite extraordinary, and when what happened was you were forced to think about a different way just so you could continue to operate your business, and you did it. And so there's something fascinating in that. Trust. We business people have perhaps not been so great and hadn't as much faith in their employees as they perhaps should have in the past. But, all of a sudden we're forced to allow our team to work off-site, without supervision, and in some cases whilst also homeschooling their kids. And it was the insights to myself and in our own business and that our employees were very trustworthy and really took to that role. Safety was another one. All of a sudden keeping the workplace clean and sanitized. We'd been perhaps not so great about it in the past, using different packaging, particularly in food preparation, learning to keep distance, putting drive-through as one of your options and pick-up as, if you're in the food and retail trade. Safety became a very big thing. Other things, a lot more people got flu needles this year. One of our insights was that our sick leave was reduced significantly as a result, partly because of the distancing and partly just because of so many more flu needles, I guess. The blurring of the lines is interesting. This is the home and work has become one and the same in many cases for many people. A new challenge is to be able to turn off from work at the end of a day. Mobile phones that were previously only private became more utilised for work, for calls, emails, meetings, applications, and it became a mini computer. Your own computers, home computers became basically your work computers. You know, the other thing that happened on the blurring the lines theme is customers and clients started calling you outside of normal work hours, and that's probably not such a great thing. I feel that's actually going to be a hard one to break the habit of now that it's been set in many cases. Welfare, there's been a lot more checking in conversations about, you know, staff emotional well-being and also physical well-being. You know, just in setting up people from home, you had to make sure that their workplace was safe, or that they're in a proper chair with a proper desk set up in the proper way, and that type of thing. You know, this is a habit that has formed, and hopefully this is one that will stick because it has a great outcome. You know, that checking in has been really important, and I think will continue to be over the long term. Flexibility. You know, employers understanding that allowing flexible work time and practices, you know, became very essential to enable your workforce to get their required tasks done. And where employers in the past perhaps haven't been very flexible, now have learnt that you can be and still achieve your outcomes. Job description redesign. You know, there's been a lot of changes the way that your job roles and descriptions have panned out. You know, you've been needing to maximise limited resources, in some cases limited people, limited hours, and there's been a significant amount of reassigning tasks, you know, not previously done in that way or by that person. And what we learned from that is, you know, you're expanding people's knowledge and skills, and you know, and where previously you might not have thought that they were capable, you've been forced and really taken to it. Training is another one. You know, for a start, discovering how quickly people can learn a new way. Even, you know, well, especially, you know, non-techies like me who have had to learn video meetings and in no time, and you know, taken to it like a millennial, perhaps. That might be a bit of a stretch, but communication. Realising how much the availability of information about your product or service contributes to people choosing to buy from you. And so, because you might not have had this normal opportunity to get your message out there. And so, you know, you're learning new ways to get that information to your customers and to your clients. Newsletters, social media, website, video chat, all those different types of mediums that, you know, we've dodged in the past, or we thought, you know, that we'll wait a few years for that, but, you know, you've been forced, and it's worked very, very well. Another interesting one is policy and systems tightening. You know, a lot of businesses have been forced to write better policies and procedures and systems to cover the adaptions, the working from home, the safety, the use of personal phones and computers. And that's not a bad thing. You know, a lot of businesses have been quite deficient in this in the past. And this is probably one that you may well have not maybe brought up to speed in the meantime, but I'd suggest that if you haven't, you might want to have a bit of a conversation with your accountant, or in fact, Jenni's right across policies and systems, and would be a great resource. Another one is application of labour resources, you know, keeping people in the right places at the right times. As an example, you know, consumer buying habits have changed to 24/7. So an old normal 9 to 5 workforce can't service that customer. So we've had to sort of reapply our resources and things to make sure that we meet that demand. Labour shortages. You know, this one, is this real or is it not? We're sure hearing a fair bit about it, the inability of farmers in particular, horticulture and broadacre, being able to obtain employees' labour to take their crops off. But, you know, I wonder what JobKeeper and JobSeeker has contributed to that inability for you to obtain your workforce. It appears there's probably still a few people at home, maybe not working when they perhaps could be. My question there is, you know, will that come back as things improve? Well, you'd expect that with JobKeeper reducing and eventually disappearing, and JobSeeker no doubt will be brought back to similar to previous levels at some stage, that you know, that should be one thing that pushes more people back into the workforce, into the labour force, available labour force. But I just wonder, what are you doing to attract people to your business? You know, have you changed your sales pitch? Are you having to offer incentives that weren't needed before? So, you know, these are just our observations of just 6-7 months. So my question, does any of this resonate with you? Have you had to adapt in a similar way with any of these things? And more so, are you prepared if it breaks out again? You know, many of these changes and ideas have previously seemed unimportant and non-issues, or years away from, you know, you've probably dodged them for years or thought, you know, not required, but now suddenly became the new normal business practices. So I guess that's mostly it. So I'd sort of challenge you, or suggest that, you know, if you want to discuss any of these adaptations, ideas, observations, if there's anything in there that is particularly useful to you, you know, give us a call. Call any of our many skilled people here at Lincoln's, and yeah, we will assist as best we can. So I'm just checking to see whether there's any Q&As, but there doesn't appear to be. So I'll just hold on for a second more. But yeah, once again, thanks for your time. Just remember, we've got another 2 sessions coming up, same time, same place next week. Tune in. For more of that particular one, will be, you know, more opportunities, ideas, competitor analysis, and product and service offerings in the new world. So look forward to that. So Jen, thanks for your input. I think next week, Karen's going to jump back into the chair and talk more about that next week's topic. Appreciated your time and your input, and yeah, hopefully everyone knows and understands that Jen's a great resource and available there at any time. Thank you all for your time. Enjoy your afternoon, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Thank you.